saw something that either played out there before or was still trapped in the place, you know. So I think that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, it's amazing, man. You mentioned, I think, a psychogeography. I don't know if you are familiar with the lyrics of Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I will send you a link for you to see what it's about.
Oh
And
man, I'd love
at the time that Peter Gabriel decided to leave Genesis and be on his own, he didn't have any money, and he went to that particular hill, which is about 10, 15 minutes from Bath, from his studio, the real world studio, which I'm going to be, one of the reasons that I'm going to London is to visit the place and so forth. And it's a lot of, Peter Gabriel to have a lot of, weird experiences, quote unquote, weird mystical experiences. And it's very interesting stuff as well. So, and
I'm a big fan of Peter. I think I know the place.
Yeah.
We went, when my band The Stories recorded our second album at Real World.
Yeah.
And we came down in the morning for breakfast, and me and Andy, the bass player, went to make a cup of tea, and Peter Gabriel was there.
Wow.
And you know, it was you think, wow. So, and we love him so much, right? Our band loved him so much, and I love him so much, and we said, "Oh, we love the place. Thanks for, allowing us to come and record." He was like, "Oh, thank you, yeah." And the first thing he said to me was, have you heard about the secret underground city? And I was like, no. He said, oh, there's one just up the road. And there's during the Cold War, there's a track that came down for the Queen, and it's like this underground city in Box, just outside Bath, where his studio is. So I thought, yeah, the first and only ever conversation I have with Peter Gabriel is about a secret underground city. That's the proggest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing, man. And yeah, as I said, I've never been at that hill. I'm going to be there in, I don't know, 4 weeks from now. So I will tell you what I think, if I feel or sing anything. But I think, how can I say? I think a reality is a lot more complex than we can perceive.
I think so too.
I will leave it up there. But
otherwise, it'll go to a different conversation.
Yeah. Maybe one day we'll do part 2 when we talk about, because I know a lot of the subject and the experience that you have had.
The weird shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually, Jesus Christ Superstar came to an end, and then you end up signing a deal with the Columbia Record, and you begin writing and recording your first album called All I Am. Mm-hmm. Feel free to elaborate on that, how it came together, and what's the motivation and so forth.
Yeah, that was another amazing experience. I ended up, my idea of going to Sony was they would have an idea, but the idea was just, I ended up going around the world and writing songs with some of my heroes, meeting some of my heroes, and again that was another schooling. I've always written songs, but to be in the presence of people who've written hit songs or songwriters who I admire very much, and as a result, a couple of those songs ended up on a Meatloaf album talking about synchronicity again, and a couple of boy bands recorded various things, and Slash's Snake Pit recorded a song I wrote with a friend of mine called Mars Lazar, a song called Bleed. So that was a thrill, man, because I grew up listening to Guns N' Roses are one of my favorite bands, and having Slash playing your song was just brilliant. But I think at the time, what happened was with my album, I set out with an intention of making one thing, and I started working with a guy called Henry Jackman, who at the time, very clever guy, amazing producer, and he was he'd come through the kind of rave culture, so he had all the idea, he had the big beat stuff and the rave stuff and all the what's the jungle stuff that became, it all kind of amalgamated in the British dance stuff. It wasn't my genre, but he had all that down. But he was also a classical musician, so we started this beautiful sounding album that the record company didn't want to to do. Henry's now one of the biggest Hollywood film composers. He went to work for Hans Zimmer for years, and now he's doing his own thing. So he's out. So I knew he was going to be great. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that had we have worked together properly would be, but I just had a feeling. And the first, so that was the first thing. And then I got sent down to France to work with a guy called Ian Cooley, and Ian Cooley was part of Paul Young's band. He was just a gorgeous guy. He passed away a few years ago. An amazing keyboard player. He wrote some of the big hits with Paul Young. And they brought Laurie Latham down. Laurie Latham produced all that, but he also produced the Blockheads, and I think he did New Boots and Panties for the Blockheads. So he works now with Jules Holland, a big musician here with his own TV series. So they sent me down to France, and we started some tracks, and we had Manu Katché play from Pete Gabriel's band, Pino Palladino, Dominic Miller from Sting's band came to play.
Of course.
So I built these tracks with some of the best players on earth, and then we took them back to Sony, and they went, "Nah, we don't like this," and sacked everyone. So they went, and what happened then was, because after having worked with Henry and then having worked with Ian Cooley and Laurie Latham, I thought, hey, this is it, surely. And listening back, 20 odd years later at these tracks, they sound fantastic. So it was a pity that they were never just released. And then, anyway, so what happened then was, in an effort to try and chase what was current, I ended up being sent all over the world writing with, a big songwriter here, a guy here, somebody had a hit there, somebody up and coming. So along the way, then I lost what the hell it was that I wanted to do. And I came back and I gathered a bunch of songs that ended up being, I like listening back to the album now. There's some moments on it which I think are fantastic, but there are moments that were so compromised by record companies' need to turn it into a pop thing or whatever was happening at the time. So it became something that was only partially realized. So then I released the record. We did a big show here, Top of the Pops. My mum passed away, and then I got dropped by the record label in the same week. So it was a sense of massive kind of loss and everything. But then I ended up putting the stories together not long after, and that's when Eric kind of showed up.
What was the reason that, you guys have a couple of hits, I think, Sugar for the Soul and All I Am Is You, and I don't know, I tried to put myself in the shoes of a record label. There was enough material, record label want to sell album back in the day, right? You need to have hits, you need to have singles, otherwise we cannot use you, so to speak, and we are not going to renew the contract. It was weird. It was enough there, right, for the two tracks that I mentioned, that it was getting some traction on the radios, on the pops, and for them to say, well, we are going to let you go at the end of this year or whatever. It's weird how that world works, right? So
I think so. I think they put a lot of money into it at that point, and they were like, I think if they'd have put a bit more money into it in the promotion, I think it could have gone. But at the time as well, they delayed releasing it. Look, I was young and I wasn't as sure of what I wanted to do myself, so I was part of the problem, I'm sure. But they're Sony Records. You think they know what they were doing, but I think they delayed releasing the album, and then the first incarnation of the Pop Idol or the American Idol thing happened in the UK. So when they decided to release it, I got lost in the shuffle of all that noise, which was crazy. But yeah, man. But listen, I learned so much about it. I learned about myself. I learned about music. I learned about writing. It was a big time of change. Lost a parent and lost a deal, so I had to dig deep. And I think a lot of people would have just gone, yeah, I'm going to do something else. But I just went, nah, man, I'm in this for life. I've just got to carry on. So then I put the band together with some of my solo band from that deal, and some other players that I know, and we we formed a band called The Stories, and The Stories were, it was kind of a singer-songwriter thing, but it ended up becoming like a kind of a harmony-laden thing, influenced by the Eagles and Crosby, Stills and Nash, but because we're British, we had that kind of British thing. And we made an album ourselves. We ended up going to our friend, had a converted cinema that he turned into a pub and a club. And we went there. We ended up staying for about 18 months. And one of the boys, assisted by another one of the guys, Di and Rob, produced our first album, which became The Stories. And a guy that we knew played it to another guy, and he happened to be looking after Elton John. And the album found its way in Elton John's car. He heard the album and loved it, played it for a couple of weeks. And then he called me at home in Wales and said, I love this album. I think it's great. Come on tour with us. So we toured with Elton for a couple of summers, 2006, 2007, I think. And then we ended up with that band. Then he was so good to us, by the way. He was just amazing. And it was amazing watching somebody of his, stature and genius really playing every night. It was like that was going to school. So we opened for Elton. We ended up opening for Joe Cocker, Celine Dion, Santana.
Wow, yeah.
And we ended up releasing another album, which we recorded at Real World with a guy called John Kelly. John Kelly had worked on the Kick Inside and Paul McCartney, Kick Inside for Kate Bush and
Bush, yeah.
So we were in good hands, man, and we had a great time there. We made a second album, and we did more touring and more playing, and then it came to an end in about 2009. And
yeah, everybody. I have interviewed a couple of people that who came. David Payton,
yeah,
who he mentioned again that Elton John treat people very well. You stay in, top of the line hotel and meeting, all the celebrities, and he was a very nice guy to be around and so on and so forth. Right? So.
But not only that, Claudio, one of my favorite things that he treated all his crew and his band, because they were family. They'd been with him for his band had been with him for many years, and the respect that everyone had for each other was amazing. It was amazing to see, and there's a great memory that I have. Again, was one with Andy from The Stories, and Elton came rushing in, and we were in the corridor just having a coffee, talking, thinking, "Isn't this great?" He came in, he went, "Oh, I've got to tell somebody," and he just won an award at the Q Awards, and he said, "I just got to tell somebody." And he said, "I met one of my heroes." And we were like, "Whoa." And he said, "Yeah, I just met Scott Walker." My God, it was just, oh God. And he was just virtually in tears.
Yeah.
And he met one of his heroes. And I was like, whoa, okay. That's his love of music, right there.
Yeah. Scott Walker was something else, huh? Of course, he passed away. I never saw the guy play or met him. And I said, he was something else. I don't know how to say, but.
Not two ways about it. But yeah, but having an icon like Elton still getting starstruck, that was a brilliant moment.
Why people have, I don't know, I'm going to maybe get a lot of hate mail for the following, but why people will see the sexuality of the person, right? Whether Elton John, was gay or no, or this or that, why then don't see the quality of a human being without being judged, whether you're black, white, or this or that, or I'm Hispanic with an accent, or this, or the same with George Michael and so on. Why we live in a society with we use the wrong ways, the wrong words, the wrong ways to go about judging people. It's not an accident. Elton John have received so many awards and have been so many number one hits all over the world for the last 40 years or something. The same with George Michael, 4 years. And the first thing that interviewer are asking the guy, "Hey, are you gay? Are you living with a man or this?" What business does it make? What difference does it make? Whether, if my son was one day, tell me that he got attraction to men or whatever, still I would love him the same way. It doesn't make, it wouldn't make a difference to me,
Yeah, I
right?
think,
What's your
yeah,
take
yeah,
on it?
and of course, I think these days, people are much more open to, you know, to what, however you are in life.
Mm,
I think there's a huge movement towards acceptance, diversity, and inclusivity across the board in the arts, which is long overdue, and I think it's
yeah,
amazing that that's happening. Where I've been lucky that where the circles I've moved in, there's been no prejudice anywhere for color, sexuality, or anything. I've just been very lucky, and I think to me it comes down to, are you talented? If you are, let's go. That's it. That's it.
right.
I
Absolutely,
think
man.
these days people's views are much more open, which is fantastic, and the way it
Yeah,
should be.
absolutely, man. Then we are talking about 2003 or so. So feel free to elaborate on the how you met Eric Woolfson and you began working with both. And an album called from Another Person Project and Eric based on the poet Edgar Allan Poe. Feel free to, that was premiering again, Abbey Road in 2003. Your dream came true. And
Yeah, man. So Eric, as I said earlier on, Eric got in touch
yeah,
and he'd heard from a couple of people.
yeah,
So I went to meet him and got on really well. Listen, I can't say it enough that he was such a kind, funny, as well as super talented guy. So it was a pleasure to just hang out. And Eric loved having a meeting. He loved meetings.
really.
Let's get together for any excuse and have a meeting, which meant drinking some tea, eating some sushi. He loved sushi, so he'd get a big takeaway, and then we discuss. We'd have meetings about meetings. We'd have a meeting about a meeting about a songwriting session or a songwriting thing
Yeah,
down the line. It was such good fun. My God, the whole time. So then what happened? We ended up recording the album and doing all the demos first, and recording the album, as I said earlier on, which is a massive thrill. And then Sally called one day and said, "Look, we're thinking about putting on a showcase. We want to showcase this musical," because the idea was to bring people in, see if they liked it, and then move it on. And I said, "What are you going to do? How are we going to do it at Abbey Road?" I was like, "Whoa, it's the first time a musical had ever been performed at Abbey Road." And in fact, the book of Abbey Road that you can buy at Abbey Road, about Abbey Road, has the musical Poe in there. There's a couple of, and an amazing actress called Anna Jane Casey, who played Poe's wife, or my wife, in it. She and I are in there having a kiss. So it's brilliant. There's a picture of Eric and all of that, and we're having a kiss. And she was a great kisser, by the way. And I always tell her that, best kisser. Um, so Sally then got a fantastic group of actors, all West End killers, to come and play. And David Burt
wow.
played in it, and David was Pontius Pilate in our Superstar. So it was great to see him again. So I think we rehearsed for a couple of weeks, and then did a show for a week, and it was amazing. So they built a whole theatre inside of Studio One, the big theatre where all the orchestras get recorded. And again, and you can watch it. You can buy the DVD. I think somebody uploaded it online illegally, but you can watch it. It's fab to look back. And the amount of work we did in a short space of time to put that on was crazy. It was so much work to learn it.
Yeah.
And I remember, look at this. Somebody made that. That's me as Poe.
Oh, wow. Good for you, man.
Cool. So just before we opened, for the opening night, Eric said, "Dubois, are you afraid of birds?" I said, "No, not really." He said, "Well, what about ravens?" I said, "Okay, where's this going?" He said, "Oh, we've got. Would you be up for flying a raven?" And I'm like, okay. So in the in the in the afternoon, the handler or the wrangler, I'm not sure what the bird handler is, and I had to wear this big glove, and he stood behind me. And so you tilted your hand like that. The raven, which was a baby raven, was about this big, huge bloody thing on my arm. And you do that, and it flew out over the audience and came back. And we decided that was probably too much for the live audience. So what he had me do was, I tilt my hand like this, and then the raven would kind of and the wingspan was like, it was like 5 feet wingspan, and he'd flap his wings like that. So I'm saying, I was adrift on an ocean of dreams, I was amazed, and I'd go like that, and the bird would flap. So we did that in rehearsal, which was fab. And then come the show, nobody had factored in that it was going to be dark, and a spotlight was on me. And when I turned to the raven, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't, because it was all pitch black. And all I could feel was this bloody raven trying to get up my eyes like this. And I'm doing this, and the raven's, honest to God, it was the most terrifying thing. I thought I'd end up blind by the end.
And I read somewhere that it took like, well, the album took 6 years to put together. At the time, I think Alan Parsons and Eric, went different paths, and Eric wanted to do some musical, and Alan Parsons say, no, I will stay in the technical side. And the control. There's no, it's no job for me to have nothing to do with musical. And then Eric started doing his own thing, and then it took, I think, 6 years to put that album, the project together. Which, as I say, I mentioned the album. This is a masterpiece, man. And that's a Raven, of course.
That was him.
Yeah.
Really had my eyes.
Really? Yeah. Wow. Who is that lady, by the way? I have no idea. I need to ask.
That was a model that we brought in. She wasn't in the show.
Oh.
She was tall. She was nearly as tall as Eric. She was much taller than me. I'm 6
Really?
foot. She was 6'2". Yeah, she was huge.
Yeah. By the way, ravens are very smart birds. I have seen so many videos that they play tricks. They want to take a peanut, and they need to move. Is under the glass, but in order to get to the glass, they need to move different pieces and put like a lever in between. They're very, very smart birds, man.
Smart. But he knew I was terrified, and
of course,
he made me feel it. It was brilliant. It was great fun. That was a brilliant experience. Eric was brilliant, and we then tried to get the musical on. And one of the reasons I went to the Ahoy and did the musicals of the Ahoy was to get, Joop van der Ende from Ende. He was the Ender of Endemol Productions. And I think he had Stage Holdings, which was I think they were called that at the time. It was a big company in Holland. And the whole idea was to try and get Eric's Poe up and running. But unfortunately, he got ill and passed away quite quickly.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And yeah, it was unbelievably sad. So it was never realized. I think it was never realized in the form that we had it. I think it went out and played in Korea. It had a run out there. But it was such good fun, man. And I think it's got legs as a musical, or wings, whichever one you like it.
And I think I read somewhere he was planning on writing and composing more record and musical associated with Edgar Allan Poe, and as like he got sick and things got in the way, and it never happened. Like he ended up creating like four or five musicals, I think. Some projects.
It was so sad, man. He had a lot more music left. He had a load more music left. He was planning lots of stuff, and it was very sad things. But,
world sometimes is unfair for too many ways. In many ways.
I was blessed to crash into him this time round in this life. It was great fun.
Yeah, and then I think I ended up listening to your album that you did with Robert Reed and Magenta and Cyan.
Oh, the Chimpanzee.
For the protocol Chimpanzee. I don't know what they use the name, but feel free to elaborate. That's a masterpiece. I listened to both of them. They're very good stuff.
I love Chimpanzee. So Chimpanzee is a side project of Rob Reed, who's part of a prog band called Magenta, and I think he's got a band called Sanctuary. And Rob's prog was never my thing growing up. I was much more hard rock guy.
Yeah.
But as I've gone older, I've accidentally moved. I've accidentally become kind of a progger, I suppose.
Yeah.
Chimpanzee was Rob, myself, and there was another Rob from the stories, although he's no longer involved. And it's a mixture of, we love electronic. It's all the stuff we love. So some classic rock, some electronica. We both love a bit of jazz. We love big beat stuff, break beat stuff. We love, you know, big into the Cocteau Twins, hugely into a band called Talk Talk. So we kind of threw all those in a pot and just didn't give a shit about any rules or anything. But because we love choruses ended up being involved. And for the first album, we had our friends Margot Buchanan, was a brilliant singer. Sam Brown was a great singer. H. McRobbie. Claudia Fontaine now has passed away. Love her. She used to sing with Pink Floyd.
That's
As
right.
did Sam. So we brought in all our friends, man. We brought all our friends. And we've got a guy called Tony Dallas, who's this spoken word artist. He's a Jamaican Londoner who's got this amazing voice. So on paper, it sounds like a terrible idea, but when you put it all together, it turns into this kind of otherworldly thing. So we made an album about 15 years ago, and we had some amazing reviews. We had some terrible ones as well. Q magazine said it was drowning in a sea of pretentiousness, which we used to sell the album. We put that on the bottom of our adverts. But I love the album so much. So Rob and I kept promising each other that we would do another one. So we chipped away, and every now and again I'd go up and to his studio and work on some stuff. And literally just before lockdown, we'd finished the second album, which is called The Empathy Machine. And literally we were about to release it, then lockdown happened, but we released it anyway. And again, to some stunning reviews. And I encourage all your listeners to have a little explore of Chimpanzee, because it's and what's happening now is I'm part of a creative collective at the theatre in Swansea called the Grand Theatre, and my friend Richard Mylan has written a play about his life, and Chimpanzee are doing some of the music for it. So we're back in the studio right now making some new Chimpanzee stuff, and it's one of my greatest pleasures in life, because where I live in South Wales, I have to drive over these mountains down into another valley where he lives. And the music is very expansive. And it was only last week when I was driving back from a session that I stopped on top of the mountain and looked around. And I haven't been up to this particular spot for years and years. And it's become like a shrine for people who've lost loved ones. And there are crosses there and little... obviously people make a pilgrimage and either scatter people's ashes. And I remember looking around thinking, wow, the Chimpanzee music has got this big sky baked into the sound. The actual psychogeography again of me going over the mountain and down into another valley has actually seeped into the sounds of the album. And since we made the first one, they've erected these huge wind turbines, which always remind me of like 70s folk horror or some sort of prog. It's got that kind of, that hypnosis cover, that kind of weird, these huge things in this beautiful lush landscape is such a juxtaposition. But I actually think they add to the weirdness of the place. So driving through those and seeing these huge turbines buzzing kind of was all fed into the sound of Chimpanzee. But I love, and we made a few cool videos. You should check them out. One for a song called The Calling, which is like a little mini horror film. Check it out.
I will. The albums are very good. And you mentioned a couple of very good bands. I think you mentioned Cocteau Twin, Talk Talk, and man, those Dead Can Dance was at the beginning with the Cocteau Twin as well. There's many great bands at the times, and of course, all of them came from.
Lisa Gerrard is one of my heroes as well. I know you've interviewed Lisa. She's one of my absolute heroes.
Yeah, I interviewed her already.
I know. I listened to that.
Well, I interviewed. She didn't let me talk. She was doing all the talking. So, but I'm going to be doing a follow-up interview with her and Brendan Perry as well. Hopefully. I
love Dead Can
Dance. But so many great bands. I don't know if you're familiar with the record label 4AD.
Yeah.
That was formed by Ibo and Man, that guy have a vision. It's a lot of
Yeah,
a lot of great bands came from that. Were associated with that record label. It's amazing, man. And but so many great bands in there. And then eventually you tour with the late John Lord. Feel free to elaborate on how was to be
yeah.
with the guy and so forth.
Well, briefly, because that's a whole other story in itself. So John, with Margot Buchanan and H. McRobbie and Sam Brown, I ended up, because of those guys, getting to meet and sing with a load of people. Margot's husband is Paul Wicks Wickens, who plays with McCartney's band. So all of a sudden, you're in a different kind of circle of amazing players. So I get invited by Margot to sing at a gig called the Sunflower Jam. And it started as a small thing. And Ian Pace from Deep Purple's wife, Jackie, and John Lord's wife, Vicky, the twin sisters, put this this gig together to raise money for alternative cancer treatments, because that's very up my street. So they invited me along to sing at one of these gigs, and John was there, and we were doing Soul Man or some soul stuff, and there were some people there, man. There were some cats. I think Phil Manzanera was there, Wicks Wickens. Who else was there? Ian Pace, obviously, from Bruce Dickinson was there singing soul stuff, which is an amazing thing to hear. Just very, very cool people. And John was there, and he'd heard me sing some stuff. And he said, "Hey, man, I just like the way you sing. Do you want to come and do some touring?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." So I ended up touring with John for five or 6 years all over the world. And he took his concerto for group and orchestra, and we did the first act of that, and then some Deep Purple stuff in the second half. And it was fantastic. So we'd go and play with orchestras all over Europe. And there was a singer called Kasia Laska, beautiful Polish singer. And then there was a couple of different bands that we'd use, Killer. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences. John, a gentleman, a pioneer, a genius musician, and one of the nicest human beings ever to walk the earth. And I ended up doing some songwriting with John. And one of the songs I wrote with John, when he passed away, he had pancreatic cancer and went quickly. It was very, very sad. We were in the middle of getting a project together of some of his classical music and then some of the songs we were writing. He was going to kind of amalgamate it and kind of like a concerto for group and orchestra, but more song-based, I think. So one of the songs that we got together, and looking back on it, I think he knew, although it was nothing was diagnosed then, it's almost if he knew that he didn't have long left. Because I went up to his house and I used to stay over and we'd drink some wine and talk. And, like anybody who'd seen that much rock and roll life, he had some amazing stories.
Of course.
Just amazing ones, which some I can share and some I never share. But this one day I went and he said, "Look, I've got an idea for a song. I want to call it All Those Years Ago." I said, "Didn't George Harrison write that?" He said, "Yeah," because they all knew each other. They used to live in the same part of down by Henley in outside London. And he said, "Yeah, I've always loved that title. Can we write something?" And I said, "Yeah, okay. What's it about?" He said, looking back at my life. And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll put something together." So we wrote some lyrics, and he had some. So we worked on this song, and it became All Those Years Ago. And out of everything I've written, I think it's my favorite thing. And when John passed away, his family, his widow Vic, who I'm going to see very soon, actually, I haven't seen for a few years, asked if I'd sing it at the memorial thing at the Albert Hall. So I ended up getting to sing a song I wrote with John at the Albert Hall to say goodbye. And it was and my friend Nigel Hopkins, an amazing keyboard player from here in Swansea, because Wicks called me up and said, "Look, I can't play some of that John stuff. It's quite intricate and he's quite idiosyncratic. Do you think Nigel could play?" So Nigel got to be John Lord for that night. It was just amazing thing, having my mate who I've known for years at the side of me at the Albert Hall playing like a genius that he is. singing a song that John and I wrote. It was one of those things, man. That's online. You can check that out. All
Yeah.
those years ago. Beautiful, and I love it. I love the lyric. I love the way it turned out, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, good for you, man. Have you ever thought about, looking back in your life and remember about your elementary school teacher told you that you know how to sing, you will not never accomplish anything in your life or whatever it was, and
Well, the weird twist of fate was
yeah,
my daughter, who's now 17, but when she was about 6 or 7,
yeah.
her teacher in school calls me aside one day and said, "Oh, Izzy's a lovely singer." And I went, "Oh, okay, that's nice." Couple of days later, she calls me and she says, "I didn't know that you were in the West End to play Jesus." And I went, "No, no, no." And a couple of days later, she said, "Oh my God, my auntie is Mrs. Richards, the teacher who told you couldn't sing."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
Oh,
ended up seeing Mrs. Richards years later. She's still with us, love her. She's still
yeah,
going, and she's
yeah.
yeah. So all of that's I saw that as a kind of final full circle. You know, it was a very funny thing.
Yeah. Well, it's good for you, man. Let's talk about the video that you released
Oh,
recently called the Lighthouse Keeper as well. Feel free to elaborate on that. Then again, your life come full circle with another
man.
Woolfson family members, and
Yeah. So I wrote this song called Lighthouse Keeper with a couple of friends.
yep,
I wanted to make a video, and I I I hadn't spoken to Sally Woolfson, Eric Woolfson's daughter, for a few years,
yep,
and I saw her on Instagram. I just joined Instagram, so I found her as a friend, and I befriended her, and then she was posting stuff about her son,
yep,
Toby. And the last time I saw Toby, he was about 2 years of age. We did the Abbey Road Poe production,
mm,
and I saw him dancing. I was like, oh my God. I wanted to have an interpretive dancing thing in the video. So I got in contact with Sally and said, "Do you think Toby would come and dance?" And I felt it was a beautiful kind of fitting end, because I can remember Toby being like super flexible as a kid. He could kind of put his foot behind his head and all this sort of stuff. And Eric, he loved Eric so much, and Eric loved him so much. And I just remember Toby being around that whole production as it started, and it definitely would have influenced or put a big seed of performance in Toby's young mind. And now, of course, he went to study dance because he's an amazing dancer, and now he's studying musical theatre. So Toby came down, and apart from him having Eric's tallness, because he's huge as well, Toby, he just did this beautiful performance for the Lighthouse Keeper, and I saw that as a final closing of the circle.
because it's the performance is amazing. Obviously, he's very talented, young kid, I suppose, and comes in the gene, man. Family of geniuses, I suppose. And
But
also, I like the video and the how cinematic that is. It's like a mini film, if you will, a film of 5 minutes. I don't know how can I say it, but it's very, whoever put that together, he or she knows exactly what they're doing, because it's very very appealing for the eyes.
thank you. That's my friend Reese, who I'm
Yeah.
seeing tomorrow.
Oh,
Because the latest thing I'm doing is one of the old Stories members, Andy Collins, a Liverpudlian writer called Pete Riley, who's brilliant, and myself. I've got this little trio called Balsamo, Collins, Riley. It sounds like a bad firm of lawyers. Balsamo, Collins, Riley, and we're filming with Reese tomorrow, the guy who put that, because we're doing a Badfinger cover for a compilation album that's coming out in America later on in the year. So we're doing a song called "Keep Believing." I've got to learn although I've sung the song, I've got to learn the words for the video in a minute. So we're going to be filming with Reese tomorrow. So I'll tell him. But he's my favorite video maker. He makes things look so beautiful.
Tell the guy that I say hello and that he's very good at what he does.
I will. That's lovely.
Where are you working nowadays, man?
So I'm doing some
That
of that,
one.
doing some songwriting. I'm part of a creative collective at the theatre in Swansea,
Yeah.
helping put some theatre back in the theatre after
Yeah.
the COVID situation.
Mm.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just keeping making music. I'm back in the studio myself next week doing some solo stuff. I
Yeah.
got an idea of a cycle of songs myself that will be a bit Lisa Gerrard and a bit Cocteau Twinsy, a bit kind of esoteric. I want to do that. I want to see that.
All right.
And then Chimpanzee are starting their third record, partly from my friend's play called Sorter. And but we're going to take those 3 songs and we're gonna carry on making another album for the Chimpanzee, which I can't wait. And we're hoping to tour that. We've never played it live. It's always been
Really?
like a studio thing. Yeah. So we're hoping to tour that soon.
Good for you, man. All right, Steve. That's all I have, man. I've been talking to you for like 2 hours. So.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, it was. I'm quite sure we'll do a part 2 because it's a lot of topics that we need to.
Yes,
we need to
man.
cover.
Let's
It
go
was
down
very
those
nice talking to you. By the way, I'm going to be. You mentioned Phil Manzanera. I'm going to be interviewing him on Tuesday evening. He's a very nice person as well. So
he's a lovely man, and I don't think he'll remember me from that, but he'll certainly remember the sunflower jam stuff. It was wonderful.
I will mention it was very nice talking to you, Steve, again.
Thank you so much,
Good
Claudio.
luck to you. And hey, when I'm in London, we need to get together for a beer,
Let's do it.
and you know, and I'm definitely going to be meeting Sally as well for a cup of coffee or something.
Oh, great. Well, I'll come to that. That'll be great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.